So Weiji, do you want to start with the first agenda item since you're leading the PyOpenSci submission?
Okay, yep, okay, go ahead. Yeah, so PyOpenSci, we've got, so for those of you who don't know, PyOpenSci is sort of like a, it's not quite a journal, it's more just like a place where there are people, there's like a review process where people review software. So we sort of decided to go with them because they're sort of like Python focus and sort of open science focus. And so we've got two reviewers who sort of went through like the PyGMT documentation and tried to like do stuff like see if things install properly, that sort of thing. And they sort of came back with reviews, and both reviews were pretty positive. Like we've got a lot of ticks on the review comments. There are like a few things that we kind of need to work on. So some minor things. The minor things are sort of like having like a quick install in the README and clarifying some of the dependencies used to run like unit tests. So like kind of stuff we can do pretty much like in a week if we wanted to. The other main thing, which might take a bit more time, is having examples. So like one-liner or two-liner examples for each user-facing function. So currently we're missing quite a lot of examples for like the data processing PyGMT functions. So things like, what's a good one? Grid track or surface, like, so we might have like gallery examples for them, but not so much like inline examples, which is like something GMT kind of has. Like when you go to like a GMT manual page, you see like the one-liner examples on like how to use that function, but PyGMT doesn't really have that yet. So that's something which might take a bit longer. And I know Will's like working on quite a bit, trying to work on some of those. And to be honest, I'm not sure if those examples need to be completed for us to get through the PyOpenSci review. But it's, yeah, that's probably something I need to like trace up on. But definitely like the other minor things, document things, we can definitely like get done in like a week or two. Like, so sort of by the end of January. And yeah, that's about it.
I thought they had kind of like a major hang up with like kind of essentially the fact that we're still making a lot of like GMT type calls. I thought both reviewers brought that up.
Yeah, they did bring that up, but I'm not sure if that's something which would be like a roadblocker, like that would just stop us from, you know, getting accepted, essentially. Because how would I put it? It's something like we definitely need to look into, but I'm not sure like for the purposes of PyOpenSci if that's something like having like a fully like a feature complete thing is necessary to be like accepted.
Yeah, I agree. My interpretation of those comments was that they want us to focus on it, but not necessarily as a requirement for being accepted into PyOpenSci. I think we should have those issues addressed before submitting to a journal with a paper attached to it, like JOS or G-cubed.
Yeah, like that would be, well, even like for JOS, like I'm not sure if that's something that needs to be done. Like ideally, it would be like, you know, we would have like a beautiful Python interface and all of that, but yeah, I'm not even sure if JOS requires that.
Yeah, that's right. Josh typically discourages examples, right? So if it, for example, GMT6's G-cubed paper has several examples, which would publish the static version of our current syntax, which might not be what we want if we're planning to make it more Pythonic, but since JOS doesn't have those same types of examples, it might not be a requirement for that journal.
Right. Okay. So yeah, so it depends on like what we decide to go to, like GCube or JOS or some other.
Yeah, I just think the problem is if we are planning on doing it eventually, we're introducing major like backwards compatibility issues, since it won't be like minor changes. So essentially, we don't want to. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like if we get to like 1.0 before we'd like publish, I would assume that would be problematic then for us to try to change things like to become more Pythonic after the fact.
Well, yeah, it depends on like, cause like the software paper thing is still like relatively new. Like to take like an extreme example, like NumPy just had like a paper published, like was it last year or something? And NumPy has been around for more than a decade, and they've definitely like gone through like major like API changes. So it's but we don't want to be like NumPy, like we don't want to wait like a decade before having something out, right?
For the user-facing examples, you mentioned the inline type of examples from GMT. One aspect that we've been talking about improving for that for quite a while is that those examples are not fully reproducible because many of them use imaginary data sets versus remote files that can be run. So is it for our docstring examples, do you anticipate those being fully reproducible where it'll load and rely on an existing data set, or is imaginary example such as directly copying those from GMT sufficient?
Well, truth be told, Megan, when I'm wrapping a data processing function, I usually don't know what it does. So I have been filtering it with if there is a remote file, then I'm like, well, then we can use this. Whereas if I have to make up data, I'm not really going to be sure what it's looking for. So by that metric alone, I think it's good to have a fully reproducible example so people can kind of understand what it is in fact doing, as opposed to having to like necessarily have the appropriate data on hand.
Okay, and so the other factor is the CI. So you have a nice example for one of the data processing functions, and currently that would be run by I'm not sure if which of the testing modules run that, but it would be tested as part of the CI. So is that something we want to figure out, or before we start this process of adding more inline examples, or is that something to sort out separately afterwards?
I mean, I think it's a good idea. It's saving us effort later on as long as we're, because I just think it's going to be a problem as we add more and more to change it. I've seen your comment. I briefly kind of looked through and couldn't figure out how to disable like CI just for that example. But I think that is the way to go.
Yeah, off the top of my head, the hackish way is I think you can add like a comment like CI, almost like, I don't know the exact command, but it's like doc script CI skip or something. There would be like a magic comment you can add to skip just that one liner. But to make it sort of, but that would also show up in the documentation page. So we probably don't want that either. But I'm sure like Sphinx or something has a way to disable that. We just need to like find the right page. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take down some notes.
In one of the reviews, I think it was Simon mentioned that when he ran the test for the first time, 1/3 failed with this happens when you start running the test. Does any of you know what causes that? I have not encountered that before, but it's been a while since I ran the test for the first time.
No, I know exactly. So he didn't run DVC pool. I think that's like the main problem, because the DVC install steps is like way below. But I don't think he got to that and he just like, so if you just go from like the top to bottom, and which is what he did, I think, run PyTest or like make tests or something, which runs all the tests, but not have, because he hasn't done like the DVC pool step, he wouldn't have those images, and then he would, so that error sort of pops up.
So maybe it'll be a good idea if we just add before like the make test to say like we recommend using git pull, DVC pull, just or not git pull, but just DVC pull to make sure you're, or would that be could have
So it's just
potentially
like sort of like reordering some stuff so that they actually work from top to bottom, rather than like requiring someone to read the whole thing and then know like what steps to run. So it's it's just like a reordering problem.
Are there any other comments for that would be helpful to talk about now for the reviews, or if not, we can sign up to do some of these tasks on GitHub?
So I mean, I'm assuming, do we have like a deadline? I mean, obviously it's when it gets done, but is there, I guess, how much are we trying to prioritize PyGMT or PyOpenSci versus like wrapping new modules, or just like general improvement? I mean, like I know I've been like casually working on the tutorial and stuff like that, but do we want to move like this to like the highest priority of like, hey, this is like housekeeping we want to get done first versus like more like features?
To be honest, like the two documentation things, they probably like don't take very long.
Okay.
Like not counting like the example stuff. So
I mean, I honestly don't think the examples will take that long, because I think it'll be a matter of looking at the tests we have and then copy pasting and then rewriting it to make it better for an example.
Especially since Wiltz chose to wrap all the modules.
The ones that use remote files.
It was very ambitious. Yeah, but like I would do the quick install thing in the README, because that's just like a few lines, like conda install PyGMT, literally. Like, and and like the thing Megan mentioned about the CI tests, the unit tests not being able to run properly on the first time, that we could sort of like edit the documentation for that. And we probably don't need to like write too many new things. Like it's probably just like reordering stuff, just so that they work for like a newcomer.
How will we be able to see if it's the CI is running the inline examples or not?
There's when you look at the results, the doc string examples are first, so you can see that those files have examples run in them. I could post a link to an example of this, but the report from PyTest includes all the specific functions and examples that were tested.
Okay. So this is when you're running it. So not when you're going through the Sphinx build. It's when you're running make test or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so, if I remember right. And I think we'd figure this out locally, because it should be mirrored in the CI, since the CI is just using the same PyTest commands that are in the make file.
Okay.
At least from my experience, debugging in the CI is nightmarish compared to trying to figure it out locally first.
Yeah, it takes like 15 minutes versus like 10 seconds.
Okay, cool. What about what are we thinking for releasing version 0.6.0?
Yeah, I kind of was thinking like that seemed really early, and then I was like, well, it's been 3 months since 5, which
I don't know. Time kind of flew by last month.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but I also don't feel like we've done a ton since the last version. I feel like Maybe I'm just completely making that up, but I just feel like there hasn't been nearly as much activity or changes. So like we don't really have
Yeah.
any new features, I don't think.
Yeah, I was sort of like hoping to get 0.6.0 out before EGU. And since they pushed back EGU, I guess there's not like a real urgency to release, make a release
When is
so
it?
soon.
Is it the one you're talking about the one in April now?
Yeah, it got, so this
It-
is, so we can jump forward a little bit because
Okay.
it does have some relevance for the release plans. EGU got pushed back to May, I think, 22nd to 27th, 23rd to 27th. So it's over a month later.
Yeah,
And it's still, you know, everyone's hoping that we can get together in person, but who knows,
who knows?
as always.
So I mean,
So-
I think no matter regardless, April or May, it's pretty realistic that we could get another release before then. It's just a matter of, are you guys are you thinking early March or something like late April?
I know, I was thinking like late Feb or March. Maybe. Just, yeah.
Yeah, I think early March could be good, and we could even try to aim for getting the first Pythonic syntax for GMT in for that release, which would be a pretty exciting step forward. So that would be like deciding on that pen RFC. And by then, we could hopefully get a couple of the in progress PRs for new functions merged in.
I mean, I think that's definitely realistic. I just think, especially for like changing the Pythonic, making it more like Pythonic arguments, I think there's going to be a lot of inputs for that and a lot of back and forth. So while I think it's better to get that going earlier because it's just going to cause trouble for us later, I also think that will be probably like a sticking point for a lot of people, just a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, we don't need to hold up any release for if it turns out that there's too much discussion going on for getting that. I will have other new features, I would think, by early March to release.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Early March.
Question mark.
Yes.
Which kind of new features are you thinking about? Like
So
anything very
go ahead.
different or very different or just new features?
So there's, I think, several like new wrapping more GMT modules in. I know I have a couple, GRD, HistiQ, and I think convert, and then Weiji has at least triangulate, and Will, you have a few, I think, maybe. Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I have like 5 other modules.
Hence me not being able to name them all. Yeah, so there's that aspect of it, and then there's also a few more in-depth features that are a bit more complex to deal with, including using dictionaries to sort through or to pass different modifiers, the GMT arguments, as well as passing images in and out, and how we're going to do that, whether it's through something like temporary files with VRXarray or through actually wrapping the GMT datasets. And those are, I think,
A bit more complicated, yeah.
a bit more complicated, yeah.
So basically, like if you want to do like remote sense, like look at Landsat remote sensing sort of images, and you're working with like multiple bands, then that's, yeah. It's, you can see how complicated that can get.
For sure.
Because it's not just stuff on the PyGMT side we need to do, but also like some upstream stuff we need to do as well on like X-ray and real X-ray. So yeah,
understood.
but it'll definitely come at some point.
it's pretty strange because every time that I try to do a map or when I may try to use a PyGMT or producing something, I use the PyGMT, and every time that comes with some remote sensing data, I jump to Google Earth Engine or anything else because it's very complicated to do. So
yeah, and it's complicated. Yes, that's the reason it's complicated as well. But GMT itself does like you can actually use GMT to do remote sensing. I'm not sure why people would do it, but it is possible. And like I'm a remote sensor person myself, so I kind of want PyGMT to be able to handle like at least some of the basic stuff. Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions, Andre, for what features you'd like to prioritize for moving forward?
Yeah, no, actually, no. Actually, it's a lot of different packages everywhere, and it would be fantastic to have everything in just one place. However, I understand that it's really complicated because PyGMT, so GMT is so flexible, so you can do anything actually. It's difficult to like to. So you know probably the PyLeoclean, so the people that works with time series analysis. So it's a very new thing, and they have a lot of filters, different filters that it would be nice to have in the GMT. However, I know that it's dependent on the Python version and the other this library universe that you have to put all together, so it's complicated, but yeah, or maybe exactly getting new things running on GMT. I don't know.
Yeah, so there's always like this thing where we want to have GMT just like have a simple wrapper of GMT functions, and then there's also like the broader goal of okay, we want to make it a bit more than GMT, so like having those like being able to work easily with like time series data or other having other Pythonic sort of stuff like on top of what GMT can do. So and it's always like a bad, yeah. I don't know what's everyone's point of view, but like there's a lot of work that needs to go into that. But yeah, we probably need like more volunteers or just like more people helping out. Like, I'm not saying you have to help out, but it's also good to like if you have like ideas on like how to make something happen, like you write it down as like a GitHub issue, and then we can sort of okay, yeah, is this like a good idea? Is it like workable? And then can we do it? That sort of thing.
Yeah, there is one thing that one thing that I try to do is to do notebooks, like because actually you can do using the PyGMT and then some mathematical processing or time series or filtering or so on, and then plotting. So, but I don't know if it makes any sense to make a new feature just with the whole workflow process. However, if we just keeping pushing new releases with the notebooks examples, that will be more people probably using to do similar things. I mean, every new release, so we can, I can help a lot of try to producing more notebooks as examples to using a workflow, how to do time series extraction and analysis, and using the PyGMT to plot. So that maybe it's interesting to have the release with the notebooks that you can diversify the use of the PyGMT. I mean.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I think that our examples, we got great feedback about them as part of the PyOpenSci review. We are definitely lacking in applied examples. So it's something that's trying to do particular scientific task, and it sounds like that's what you're suggesting. So I 100% agree with you there.
Yeah, it's just interesting because my first contact with GMT was in 1994, so it's a very very early version.
I was like born that year.
Yeah, it was like it was very interesting because I was in a ship in an Antarctic trip, and everyone used the GMT, and I learned that on board, and I tried to replicate. So I did all my master and the PhD using GMT, and every time that I try to explain how to use it for people, it's just a very special way to think how you plot your data. And then when I just pointed to PyGMT and other things, the people get tired because they just want the solution very ready. Like put your data here, change this, and then you have this. So if you invest in notebooks, maybe the people just started just playing around with options and other things, but they have already the flow charts or the workflow, how to process the things. And I can put an effort on that. So I have the will and the power to do that. So that just to try to produce more notebooks with examples.
Yeah, and even if it's just like if you make like a blog post or something similar, like that's sort of what came to me like when you first told that idea. Just like having a blog post of okay, this is a new release. These are some of the new features, and then like, okay, here's like a workflow that uses some of those new features to do something that you couldn't do in like the previous version. Like that, that itself would be like something good. And if you have that blog post, like just tell us, and then we can like put it on Twitter, Instagram, and then like have
perfect.
that sort of outreach.
Perfect.
So that people can see it.
Perfect.
And to be honest, like even like our release notes, like they're getting like longer and longer, and people don't want to just see, okay, we've done A, B, C, and D, but like what exactly? It's like A, B, C, and D. Like, people look at, I don't know, grid track, and like what's grid track?
It's true.
Like what does it do? Like,
yeah, just think blog posts can be the medium, the medium. A lot of people that's just look, I use that a lot. Like I want to do something and then I look in the medium, someone tested or made a tutorial or so, and then I take the box and we can start doing that.
Yeah, and I know like there is like someone who has done it, like like taken PyGMT and like done some tutorials and put it into like a blog post format. I think he even made like YouTube videos on it. But, but yeah, but we like it's not really like, it's visible to like some people, but like not to us. Like okay, yeah, maybe we should like put a link to that. Or, I don't know.
Utpal Kumar, I think is the name. So I just found one here in the easily plotting earthquakes data on a top level of topography map in a few steps, and that it was just explaining pretty simple how to do that in using the PyGMT.
Would you mind sharing the link to
that? Yes.
Thanks. That looks really cool. I'm looking forward to reading through that later.
Yeah, it's a pretty beautiful maps.
So I think we won't have another community meeting right before then. If we're planning on the release for March, does everyone feel comfortable with wrapping up any features or maintenance issues online before then, or is there anything else that we should talk about in a meeting?
I don't think we have any major changes. I'd be kind of interested in, I would say the kind of when you talk about like the changing like the pen inputs to be more Pythonic, I think that's the one we should probably most make sure we're getting community input on. Because I don't think anyone's going to disagree with wrapping additional modules or like all the grid input replacements, but I do think that will be the one where we might have, we don't necessarily need another meeting. It's just we need to give ourselves time to make sure people are actively participating in it and ideally coming to a consensus.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And other than that, I just want to fix that bug where like you can't have spaces in PyGMT function. It's like
I know when I was writing in the tutorial for it, I was just like, this just seems like it's such like a hacky way of doing it.
yeah. Like it's I just need someone to like review that properly.
Okay, I'll get on
I thought
that.
we were waiting on a bug for that. I thought that's what the issue was.
Oh no, I think yeah, I feel like that's gonna there's bound to be like some weird corner case where I didn't catch. Like, so someone needs to like take a proper look at that. But so far, like our unit test passed, but you know, we don't know, like there might be like some random case where it just doesn't work. And to be honest, like this is like a really hacky way of like fixing this bug. We're just like replacing space with like an octal character.
I mean, I feel like it's happening under the hood, so it's not too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree that seems like a big one to get fixed. Klaus Peter, did you have something
Yes.
to go?
So last time we discussed about GMT select to be integrated. Is there any progress with that? So someone mentioned last time we could target GMT select. I don't know if it's in the protocol, but we talked about it.
Yeah, changes. Did I finish the...
Because I think that would be quite interesting, because for many people integrating real workflows, they need to select something by polygon.
Oh, I think select is finished already.
Yeah, that was 1429 is the pull request. It's been merged. It's just called select though in this.
Oh, yeah, so if you do PyGMT.select.
I'm asking because I noticed recently that there's some limitation from the GMT select module from GMT itself, that it's limited to a certain number of line lengths. So if it's think about 4090 bytes per line, then it cuts off all the further bytes after the select.
If you have an example and want to raise an issue in the GMT repository, that would be helpful.
Yes, I would have to create one. So if you have 10 lines and you're selecting something and you get out 3 lines and any of these 3 lines is longer than 4090 bytes, then it's cut off. So most of the reasonable lines, they are not as long as 4000, but if they're coming from some kind of database and you're generating a lot of comments and other things in that line, selecting them and reusing them for some further filtering, for example, then you're missing parts of these lines. So that's kind of, it would be nice to have some kind of a switch there, like saying how long the line should be. So if you say 10,000 bytes would be okay, then have some switch to say, allow some longer lines. So it was quite some limitation also.
I mean, I'm assuming we're limited if GMT itself is limited, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think definitely addressing this on the GMT side is the way that we'd go. Yeah, do you have a GitHub account, Klaus Peter?
No, I don't have an account because most of the time I'm not able to post under my name because if people see that, I don't like that people see I'm posting there. So, maybe I'm mentioning it with the next GMT meeting we have.
Okay, I can, if, yeah, I don't want you to have to go through a lot of work if you aren't already on GitHub. So I can look into this and post an issue. Are you okay with me putting the issue forth in the
Yes,
GMT repository?
perfectly great. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'll look into that.
Yeah, so it appears if you just use one line or two lines with more than 4090 bytes, you will see that.
Okay, thanks for mentioning that. As for the status update, as Wei Jin will mention, it is wrapped, but it will have the same limitations as core GMT.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. Does it work if you use binary? Is it possible to use like the binary mode or?
No, most of the entries which I'm selecting are not binary. Those are ASCII files with they're coming from some database, and you have longitude,
okay.
latitude, and then you have some markers, let's say 100 columns or something like that, and then it's cut off. So they are not binaries themselves. So it doesn't matter. It's another thing I saw with, for example, with PS Legend. If you're using that, I used that with the GMT version 5, and then I used it. I ported all the modules to GMT 6.3, and I saw that I'm using PS Legend with a lot of symbols in one legend, and it crashes then if you're using more than about 100 symbols per PS Legend. So I have a small map on top, and I have a very large legend below, and in former versions it didn't crash with that number. So I said I have to take more than one PS legend. So I separated my legend into 3 legends and have 3 PS legend calls because there was probably some memory or other issue when in the version 6.3. So there was another thing which happened just when porting. Maybe it's only me using such large numbers of symbols.
Yeah, I'll try to look this up again. I remember a relatively recent pull request that increased the number of entries that can be produced using the modern mode legend module. So, and I'll check what that limitation is now. You're right that
Yes,
there is some, and I can't remember whether it's changed since before or after 6.3 was released.
It was very hard to find because there was not really a warning or real understandable message. It's just crashing, and it didn't generate a reasonable postscript after that.
Well, we should certainly fail more gracefully than that. So if, I'll check on that as well.
Thank you.
Should we, the last agenda item is EGU. So we mentioned earlier that it's.
Do we want to establish a date for the release, by the way?
Sounds great to me.
We, nothing in stone. I was just, if we're going to have a release date in late February, early March, at least give us something to, do we want to say?
No, like an actual date. Okay.
Just, a tentative goal.
So a lot of the past releases seem to have been on Saturdays. Is that unintentional, or is that just random that's how it's happened?
I know I request on Saturdays just so it's not on a work day for me because I can't really do work on this at work. So that way I would just be able to do it. So I know I've always requested weekends, but I don't think there's any rhyme or reason other than personal convenience for me when I've been a release manager.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy with a weekend. 5th of March.
5th of March sounds great.
Saturday.
And who should we have for release manager? I cannot do that today.
I could handle it.
Okay.
Oh, I was gonna say give Michael a chance since he doesn't If he wants it.
Yeah, that sounds
Okay,
good to
yeah.
me
We can
too.
ask him, yeah. Or we just write it in the notes and then he has,
Michael,
he
you
has
have
to
it.
do it.
Let us know if you have any questions. Actually,
good.
one thing I just thought of while we're on the topic, just like upcoming wrapping modules and stuff like that. Do we ever come to a consensus of how we want to track when we're wrapping the base stage just for a module, then kind of building up either if it was like, because we have both the issue templates and the was it not storyboard, but
The
project board. That's
project
what
board.
it is.
Storyboard sounds good.
Yes,
Sounds like we're making a movie.
definitely have a storyboard. Oh,
I don't think we had come to a conclusion on that.
yeah,
I think I'd prefer to maybe just make it optional to have issues. So people, if they want to create an issue, can, but people, like you said, Will, that you don't really find value in that. And if it's extra work as you're wrapping these many modules a month, then I don't think we should require that. So that's my
Yeah.
suggestion, open to other
I mean,
ones.
I don't consider each of them a lot of work. I just think if you have to update the project board, and again, nothing that's like overly hard, but you're kind of like things are gonna fall through the cracks. Then it'll be is this issue right? Is the project board right? Stuff like that.
yeah. It's like, ideally we would have like one spot, to have these things, but
Yeah.
it's also like people prefer like two different things.
Yeah.
And for new users who don't have permissions to the project board, they can't edit that. So it'd be better to have them post an issue, like a feature request issue. First, like for you, Will, like if always got like 10 different wrappers going on, like you don't want to like track through like 10 different issues and 10 different PRs. So maybe like the project board's easier for you. I don't know.
I mean, I think like issue requests can still be a thing when a new user wants it. I just think the project board is easier to see. Like, all right, this could use like when you're looking for new things to do. It's like, hey, this needs modules being wrapped, or this needs an example being added. So it's a very quick, easily available modules that need like additional work. That's just my thought, though.
Yeah.
But I do think that the option should still be for new users to open an issue when they want a feature request.
Yeah.
It just shouldn't be the way we're tracking progress on the wrapping of that module.
Okay, that seems fine to me. We can do all the tracking on the project board. And if we wanted to, I think we could open issues for individual components. So say we wanted a gallery example for one, that's a checkbox on the project board, but is something that a new contributor could help out with. So we could have an issue that's, rather than progress on wrapping, like for example, triangulate, it would be just create a gallery example. Does that seem like a good way to separate, like enticing new contributors from tracking the progress?
Yeah, I think that's good, because I mean, I do think, right, I know I came to the project first by writing examples, and I think that's the most accessible way of like getting into it.
Okay, well, I'll update that the instructions PR to have all the tracking be on the project board, and have the option to create issues for any component of wrapping a module.
Sounds good.
So for EGU, since it's now in May, I don't think we have to do too much planning at this meeting. The one email that we got today was that within the next couple weeks, we'll need to send any scheduling requests. So if anyone has any other sessions at EGU that they don't want to conflict with our session, we can, I would say, post that in the forum post about EGU, unless you have a different suggestion as a kind of leader, Weiji.
Oh wait, sorry. What email?
There was an email this morning about scheduling requests for the PyGMT session. So to send to them information about any sessions that should or should not be at the same time or right before or after. If you haven't gotten that, I can forward it to you.
Wait, who was that from? Mhm.
It's from EGU22 at copernicus.org.
Okay, could you forward that?
Yep,
to me?
didn't look like phishing, but guess I'll check it out if it only went to me.
No, it's also like, I'm not sure like when my old email will expire, so I probably should migrate some of my emails at some point before I, yeah.
Yeah, things to worry about when you're finishing outside of position. I
When you're,
definitely understand. Okay, I'll post that and I'll forward you the email and post that information in the forum post about EG
so
2022.
just about schedule conflicts. Tell us.
So I've never been to an EGU, but is it kind of a similar thing to an AGU, or is this like a 15-minute talk you're planning on giving, or is it more like the lightning round that was you did at AGU?
Oh no, this is like a proper workshop. So like a, what was it, 3-hour workshop or something? Yeah, they call it a short course. So, and I think you could have 2 sessions, sort of with like a break in between, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah, and I don't think I'm probably not going to be flying to Vienna for this. I'm not sure about you, Megan. Were you planning to?
I have no idea at this point. We'll see. Everything seems to be changing so fast.
Yeah.
So if
All right, it's Mike, Leo, and
stays
I
there-
as people heading up the European group.
What's that?
Just kidding, I'm not going. I was just saying it's Mike, Leo, and I who have to go since we're already in Europe.
Yeah, I think Leo was intending to go. I'm not sure like where he is now. Andres not going. Yeah.
For me, it would be impossible. But well, I don't know. My experience with EGU, it's a little bit more chaotic and bigger than AGU. And but it's much more fun. Well, I don't know. It's my personal. It's much more fun. AGU, much more. Well, but I don't know. It's different places, different time of year. But I'm not going. But I know there's a lot of people already planning to go personally, in person.
No, EGU, I definitely had like good impressions of EGU. It seemed like it was like big, but not like crazy big in a sense. Then again, that was like pre-pandemic, so. Anyways. Okay, so.
So I guess I wasn't really tracking too much on the EG. I guess I just kind of I had heard about it, but didn't give it too much thought. Are we looking at developing some sort of like 3-hour tutorial for it, or like what essentially what work is required on our part? Since it seems we'll have a little bit of breathing room after the release, but what do we need to do as a team for whoever's going to be presenting it?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely need to create some content for it.
Yeah.
The content will probably depend on whether it's hybrid or in person. Either way, it will probably involve some component of tutorials. Is that right, Weiji?
Yes, like we'll probably just mostly recycle some of the content from like previous workshops, but definitely like throw in some new things in there, and because there's been like a lot of new features, and I sort of want to do like if we have time for it, like do some more sort of like applied stuff. So especially like if we get some of the remote sensing stuff like done, we could like have a tutorial on how to plot like Sentinel-2 images, or like process a Sentinel to image back to back from download to some NDVI calculation, and then using GRD image to plot it.
So I mean, it feels like we have most of the kind of major plotting functions already wrapped. Would this be adding like functionality to, you're saying like importing data, kind of what you were talking about earlier with like the different like bands of imagery and stuff like that?
Yeah, so that's something I need to work on, like the multi-band sort of loading.
I guess one thing I thought about with regards to that is how we use data arrays rather than data sets for everything. Has there ever been talk, Luigi, of allowing data sets, which are, I guess, more analogous to netcdf files, which is natively what GMT is used to working with, rather than just a single data array from the data set?
Ooh. So like for a single data set, have like each band be a data array. So you have like red, green, and blue bands. Have each of that be like a single data array within the data set, X-ray data set.
Yeah, or even more general than that. So say you had a data set that contains like sea surface temperature. A lot of the attributes, the global attributes, will be lost in the routing through PyGMT because you have to convert it. You have to extract one data array from that, and then either reassign that into the data set or work with it without any of the global attributes. So if you were to instead allow passing the data set itself and somehow communicating what individual array from that you want to operate on, you could then retain the metadata associated with the original data set.
Yeah, like to be honest, that's something which I kind of want to what's the word for it, outsource to like Rust to one of the other Python libraries, like.
Oh, okay.
So like depend on like how real X-ray or raster-real or like some of the other Python libraries do it, like I would just like use that and not reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
If they use data sets, then yeah, we'll use data sets as well. But if they use data arrays, then I think that's what we should use. And
yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think Python is like the language for data processing. So as far as selecting different columns and like just making sure you have like the right data going in, I feel like that has already been done by other packages.
But like
It's
the
just a matter of
metadata,
incorporating it.
I do hear you on the metadata side of things. Like we kind of want to preserve as much of like the metadata we read from like the netcdf file or the geotips. Like,
yeah, maybe it's a matter of documentation showing how we can use X-ray or Rio X-ray to reassign appropriately after you're operating on a data array with PyGMT.
Yeah, but it's also like so GMT, by extension PyGMT itself, like we can't really plot multi-band data like easily. It all has to be like squished into like almost like a single array, like this. Isn't that? It sort of has to be like a flat structure for it to be passed into GRD image, right?
You can do either an image or a grid. So you can pass
Like grid view.
RGB bands, but it doesn't do any of like in QGIS. You can assign red, green, and blue values to 3 brands, and it will automatically do the like squish to 0 to 255 and trim the outer 1% on either end. But GMT will not do that for you. So it's
Yeah, so
requires
someone has to know that, okay, you have to squish this to like 0 to 255. Like
or
if it-
0 to 1, yeah.
Oh, does 0 to 1?
And then there's a flag that you have to use to tell GMT that it's 0 to 1. So I think we could make it
Okay.
smarter.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely like, I guess we just need to like have like a prototype that kind of works and then sort of improve on that.
So part of this is that there's GRD mix and then GRD image. And I think that a lot of things that GRD mix does, GRD image used to be able to do, but is now deprecated, but it still works behind the scenes. So I might be mixing some of the undocumented and documented features right now and talking about them.
Yeah, I think GRD image deprecated the multi-band, so like the RGB band input. So
Yeah.
that kind of has to go through GRD mix.
To create a essentially TIFF file. Yep.
Yeah, and then GRD image will plot that.
Mhm.
But you're right that I think behind the scenes secretly it still allows for.
Yeah,
for
that's the case
RGB
with
and
everything
stuff.
in GMT. It's part of the
Like-
reason why it's now up to like 400,000 lines of code is because it all still works.
Anyways,
Yeah, I think it would be super cool to get some of this in for the EGU workshop.
I have a question.
Yeah.
yes.
So the idea is to recycling some tutorials that you have before in the past. How many tutorials or examples using PyGMT do you have with Mars data?
I think 0. Oh, actually, no, SPH to grid tech. No, that uses Venus data. I don't think any.
Well,
I
because
know one of them has the Mars 370 is like for the test file, but I don't think it's actually used in the example.
because one thing that I had got my attention that in the AGU there was a lot of people working with Mars, a lot. So it's interesting. I will try to grab some examples and try to put something like some tutorials to just to plot a map of tracking of the one of the robots of NASA there or things like that. There is a lot of measurements about the atmosphere now coming on public data sets, so we can just make a nice, beautiful track. I know that the focus is our planet, but there is a lot of people just working outside this planet, so we can try to do that.
Yeah, that could be like a fun.
It was pretty amazing. So in my experience, there was in a session. So I was in a session in the same area of people working with Mars. I think was very close to some of the exploration missions.
And
it was
like
like
a config.
Yeah, there was
That's
there was very different things in the site, and but it paid my attention because I remember that I started looking the posters and there was a lot of GMT, a lot. This was 2000 something, and there was a lot of people doing things, maps with GMT.
I can confirm that. I also saw that on AGU and on their publications and proceedings, there's a lot of Mars, and they are doing Olympus Mons and combining that with different data and data sets and some kind of mapping and so on. So that would be very interesting for them.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. We had in one of the proposals that didn't get funded, a task to add other planetary data sets to our server files and add examples for it, but unfortunately we don't have any funding for that. Having a few hours of content as part of EGU is something we could probably accomplish even without funding support.
Kind of on the topic of like remote data sets, do we have any date for when we can expect the updated load Earth relief to be out and all of our tests will fail
like
suddenly?
like the new. Oh yeah, Megan, do you have a status update?
Yeah,
Data
we've
center?
I gone through several series of testing for especially the new data sets. And last week there was we were waiting on a response about one of the DOIs, which I think was the last issue. And we were gonna give that a few days. So we at this point could release them, I think, more or less anytime. I am going to spend a few hours trying to figure out if I can get DVC to work for the GMT docs, so that when we update all the PostScript files that fail for GMT, it's not bloating the repository size. So that might be like another day or so. That ideally I'd have that figured out before we push them. But from the strict data set side, I think we've completed all the testing we want to do. Is there any requests from you all for when may be a really good or really bad time to ruin PyGMT's test suite?
I mean, I think, the longer lead time we get before the release is always better. But
Okay.
I also think these will be pretty straightforward fixes, just having to rerun tests and having to essentially re-upload the DVC files.
Okay. I can check in with Paul and set a date. It's not usually, I think, GMT's go-to is setting deadlines and then sticking to them, but I think having it help all the PyGMT developers is a good motivation to use deadlines anyways.
Yeah, well, I'm used to like it just failing suddenly the next day, so like just
Okay.
No,
Just release it
I wait for a few
whenever.
commits and update and all of a sudden it works. I don't know.
Point taken. We'll set a date and let you know.
And what is going to, because it's only primarily going to change the ocean data sets, correct?
So the Earth relief will change. That's the SRTM tiles. Those are the only two that are used in the Earth age, which is we have wrapped, is not going to change. And it will affect any tests or images at least that have any part of the image on over water, because that'll affect the color map that's used. I think when I tested it a few weeks ago, it was like 50, maybe I can't, let me look that up again, but it's somewhere between 20 and 50 tests that are going to fail.
Yeah, I remember your post. I mean, I think it'll be a pretty, like I said, straightforward fix for us. It's just a matter of we'll have to, dig in and collectively spend a couple hours doing it.
Yeah, I could check for you, like run GRD landmask over the new SRTM and the old SRTM, and then do a diff to see if having the test be over land only will prevent any future failures. I can't answer with certainty off the top of my head.
Okay. I mean, I just remember we had made it sound like if we did overland, it would be better. But either way, we'll just figure out all the tests fail when it happens. So
Well,
that's
me
sort of
and
my
Don,
attitude.
We've always like tried to future-proof this, but it never works. So
I mean, the good thing is
Like-
we'll have a new data set. It'll be pretty, like I said, straightforward. So I wouldn't stress too much about finding out exactly which tests will fail preemptively.
they're probably
As
gonna
long
like
as it-
change the GUI in the next release or something. And that's all gonna like not work. Okay, I think we're over the hour. So
Yeah,
Any
any
other-
final comments before we all head out?
Nothing for me.
Well,
That's
thanks
cool.
everyone for joining. It's been fun to talk with you all.
Yeah, great to see you all. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.